In December 1934, the San Francisco News ran a headline that read like a joke. "Hello, phone service to Davy Jones' locker." It wasn't a joke. The photograph beneath it showed bridge workers standing in a narrow concrete shaft, 107 feet below the surface of the Golden Gate, holding a telephone connected by cable to the world above. They were calling up their progress report. From the bottom of the ocean. That phone line existed because of a problem nobody had solved before. The Golden Gate Bridge needed a foundation on the San Francisco side, and that foundation had to sit more than 1,000 feet offshore, in open water, at the mouth of one of the most violent tidal straits on the Pacific coast. Every other suspension bridge built up to that point had anchored its towers on land or in a sheltered harbor. This one couldn't. The only bedrock strong enough to hold a 746-foot steel tower sat under 65 feet of water, out where the Pacific meets the bay. Construction on the bridge began on January 5, 1933. Getting a foundation into that particular patch of ocean would take the next 2 years, and it would very nearly not happen at all. The engineers, led by Chief Engineer Joseph Strauss, started with a wooden trestle. Think of it as a temporary bridge to the bridge, a raised roadway on pilings stretching more than 1,100 feet from the San Francisco shore out to where the South Tower would stand. It let trucks and men reach the work site without boats. It also gave the ocean something to destroy. If you enjoy this kind of deep dive into how things actually got built, subscribe to the channel, and tell me in the comments where in the world you're watching this from. On August 14, 1933, a cargo freighter called the Sidney M. Hauptmann was heading north to Portland when a bank of fog rolled through the strait. Fog at the Golden Gate isn't unusual. It's constant. But this fog was thick enough that the freighter's crew never saw the trestle until they were already into it. The ship plowed straight through the nearly finished structure, tearing out pilings and decking. The setback cost the project about a month. That was the first hit. It wasn't the last. 2 months later, in October, a Pacific storm rolled in and did what the freighter had started. Swells tore apart 3 of the 5 fender sections the crews had just completed, along with the end of the trestle and equipment that had been staged out there for the next phase of work. Then, before the year was even over, a second storm hit. A local paper described it plainly. Nearly 1,000 feet of trestle swept away in a 2-day gale, with only the 300 feet closest to shore left standing. In under 5 months, the ocean had destroyed the access route to the bridge's foundation twice. Some accounts put the total delay at close to half a year. For a project already fighting public skepticism and a national depression, that kind of repeated failure wasn't just an engineering setback. It was the kind of thing that gets a project canceled. Strauss didn't cancel it. His crews rebuilt the trestle a 3rd time and kept going, because rebuilding the road out to the site was never the real problem. The real problem was underneath it, and no amount of lumber was going to fix that. To plant a tower foundation on bedrock 65 feet down, in a channel where tidal currents run as fast as 7.5 knots, someone had to go down there and prepare the site by hand. That meant divers. Commercial hard hat divers, working in suits and brass helmets, descending into water so churned with sediment and debris that visibility dropped close to zero. They weren't looking at anything. They were feeling their way around the rock formations with their hands, following instructions relayed from the surface, working entirely by touch in total darkness at depth. They also weren't down there for long. The currents in the strait are only survivable during slack tide, the brief window when the tide shifts direction and the water pauses. Depending on the day and the depth, that window could run anywhere from 20 minutes to a little over an hour. When it closed, the diver had to be out, regardless of how much work remained. Their job in that window was to place explosives. 6 charges, roughly 200 pounds of dynamite each, positioned by hand against bedrock they couldn't see, to blast out wells for the tower's footings. After each blast, the debris had to be cleared, using water hoses running at 500 pounds of pressure, forcing broken rock and mud up and out, so the next charge could go in. Then the tide would turn, the window would close, and everyone would surface and wait for the next one. This is what the phone call from 107 feet down was actually for. It wasn't a novelty. It was the only way to coordinate blind, high-explosive demolition work happening in total darkness, on a schedule set by the moon. Even with the trestle finally standing, and the divers making progress, the open water problem hadn't gone away. Every dive, every charge, every load of concrete still had to survive a channel that had already proven, twice, that it could tear apart anything left exposed to it. The engineers needed a way to work on that foundation without the ocean being able to reach it. Their answer was a concrete ring. Not a small one. Workers built an oval barrier around the entire work site, pouring concrete through underwater tubes into wood forms until it rose above the waterline. Once it broke the surface, it looked exactly like what the crews started calling it, a giant bathtub. A protective fender roughly the size of a football field, enclosing the foundation site, and, for the first time, giving the workers a wall between themselves and the strait. With the bathtub in place, they pumped the seawater out from inside it. What had been an open ocean work site 65 feet down became, suddenly, dry ground. Fish that had been swimming through the enclosure were left flopping on exposed bedrock. Workers reportedly took some of them home for dinner that night. Only once the water was gone could the real foundation work begin. Standing on bedrock instead of diving blind toward it, crews poured more than 125,000 cubic yards of concrete, sinking footings 20 feet into the rock itself. The South Pier was finished in January 1935, about 2 years after the first pilings for the trestle had gone in, and roughly a year and a half after that trestle had first reached the site at all. Here's the part worth sitting with. Every dramatic near disaster in this story, the ship in the fog, the storm that tore the fender apart, the second storm that finished the job, happened before a single foundation stone was properly laid. The genuinely dangerous engineering, the part that could have killed people or scuttled the project outright, wasn't the visible drama of a ship crashing through wood pilings. It was the quiet, repetitive work of men in diving suits, alone in black water, setting dynamite by feel, 20 minutes at a time, for months. If you're finding this rebuild worth your time, this channel is worth a subscribe. There's a reason this particular stretch of the project doesn't get remembered the way the towers or the cables do. Nobody photographs wells 65 feet underwater in zero visibility. The dramatic images from Golden Gate Bridge construction, the ones that get reprinted endlessly, are the ones above the surface. Men on catwalks in the fog, riveters silhouetted against the sky, the safety net stretched beneath the roadway. But the bridge doesn't stand because of the catwalks. It stands because a small number of divers, whose names mostly didn't make it into the official record, went down into a strait known for drowning ships, and spent the better part of 2 years preparing a foundation nobody could see, using tools that let them neither see nor speak while they were doing it. The South Tower that eventually rose from that foundation reaches 746 feet into the air, matching its counterpart on the Marin side. From the road deck, it's impossible to tell that the tower's footing sits inside what was once an emergency-built concrete tub, pumped dry by desperation after 2 storms had already proven the open water approach wouldn't survive contact with the Golden Gate. The engineers who solved it never framed the bathtub as a stroke of genius at the time. The contemporary record treats it the way engineers usually treat their solutions, as the next necessary step, arrived at because the previous plan had failed twice, and a third failure wasn't an option. There's no surviving account of triumphant celebration when the water was pumped out, just fish on the rock, and a crew that went back to work. What the record doesn't tell us is how close the whole plan came to a different outcome. If a third storm had hit before the fender was sealed, if the trestle rebuild had failed a 4th time, there's no clear indication in the archives of what the fallback would have been. The bathtub design solved the problem it was built to solve. Whether the project had a real answer If that design had also failed, is a question the surviving engineering records simply don't address, because it never had to be answered. That's the piece that stays open, not because anyone hid it, because the men who built this thing were too busy finishing it to write down what they would have done if the ocean had won one more round.